So we got some relationship questions recently, and one of those was, what do I do now to prepare myself for a future relationship? That's a really good question. I appreciate the person asking that because they're being future focused and they're saying, hey, I want to make myself better now for my future partner.
Yeah, so there's a lot of things. So we're going to go through a couple of tips
Sure.
and then some book resources that we want to share.
Nice.
So if you are single, there's so many things you can do to have better communication skills. You can become more self-aware. So pay attention to your thoughts, feelings, and desires.
Your emotions,
needs.
yeah.
Yeah, and so learning about that definitely can be really crucial. But developing even some spiritual intimacy or connection with some same-sex friends and people that you spend time with, do a reading plan with them, grow.
Get in a Bible group, develop
sure.
those disciplines, working on those things. If you start thinking about what kind of relationship would I like to have? Well, a relationship doesn't just magically happen. And guess what? You're going to be half of that relationship. So make sure your half looks like what it needs to be.
Yeah. If you're going to the bar to find someone, you're going to find someone that's maybe a little bit different than if you're going to a Bible study or a Christian concert or different,
Probably.
So think about where you are hanging out, where you are making your investments, and be sure that those are God-centered investments, because that will be helpful for you to build, but then also will make it more likely that you'll find someone who has similar values.
Communication skills is something really big. And you talked about being self-aware, knowing who you are, some of the things that you need to work on, what are some of your goals, those type of things, instead of just waiting and saying, I'm just waiting for the person to find me to make me complete. I want to tell you that only God makes you complete. Complete as a person, whole as a person. To be emotionally stable, that comes from God. To be satisfied, that comes from God. So making sure that you're having the right perspective on what that future person could be, and not building it up to have undue pressure as if that future person is God, because they're not.
Okay, so what about some resources? So what's a
Ooh,
resource
good.
that you recommend for guys?
Guys, God's Gift to Women by Eric Ludy is a good book. I read that, and it talks about how are you viewing women and how are you developing your own manhood now to be an appropriate partner, to value women in the way that you should. God's Gift to Women. It's not you. I'll go ahead and give the lead of what the book's about. It's like God's gift to women is the way that you treat them, not necessarily how good you think you are.
That's good. And then for women, the book by Elizabeth Elliot, Passion and Purity, was one that I read. It's such a good book to kind of keep that focus on God being the center of the relationship. So what about a book that could be for either gender?
One of our favorite books is Boundaries.
I feel like we recommend this weekly. It is just
I do.
simple book that talks about when to say yes, when to say no, and gives you some really good examples about those people and those times whenever we don't say no and kind of what happens.
Yep. So Henry Cloud, John Townsend
Yeah.
wrote a great book there. It's a staple in lots of people's libraries, things that you can get into with it. And you'll see how it will help your communication and your boundaries in all areas of your life, not just thinking about who you're going to date.
That's good. Because when you're dating, it actually involves all the areas of your life.
It does.
So that's good.
It does.
Okay. But be grounded on God's word. Find God's word, pull it out, put it in your heart. We bind God's word to our heart so that we don't sin against him. Whenever we are focused on God, and then he will continue to lead us. So find some godly people to be around, get some godly resources, and use the time being single to rejoice and to just continue to grow.